Give her to me, he says. His hands stay open at his sides, like he already knows the answer. The baby's palm is flat against my throat. 3 months old, and she has found my pulse. The only thing in this house that still moves. 11 months ago, a woman in a beige office told me my body would never make a life. I did not cry then. Not crying now either. My hands will not stop shaking, and he is watching them the way a man reads a page he wrote himself, on a night I cannot remember living, and every part of me wants to ask what he knows about me, and every part of me already understands the answer will cost me everything I have left. If you have ever been handed a verdict about your own body and been expected to be gracious about it, you already know how this starts. You do not have to go anywhere. Stay. Some of us find each other in the middle of the night, and this is one of those places. Subscribe if you want to be found again. 9 days after we buried my sister, I let myself into her apartment in Rockport with a box of contractor bags and no plan for how long it would take. It took 9 hours. Nobody helped. There was nobody to ask. Our mother has been dead since I was 26. Our father is in a facility outside Worcester where he calls me Claudia when he calls me anything. My sister had a great many friends who came to the service in good coats and then went back to their lives, which is what friends do. So it was me, the bags, and the small stunned weight of Alicia asleep in her car seat on the kitchen counter, 3 months old, breathing through her mouth. This kind of work I am good at. 11 years baking overnight on the Gloucester waterfront teaches you one thing: hands moving, no conversation, a room to be emptied before the light comes. Stripped the bed, bagged the shoes, found a mug in the sink with lipstick on the rim, washed it, dried it, put it in the box for Goodwill. Did not sit down. The diary came out of a carton of dish towels. None of them matched. Claudia, exactly 34 years old, still buying whatever was on the clearance rack, still living like the real apartment was coming later. 3 entries. That was all. The first 2 were nothing. A grocery list with a date on it. A line about the baby not sleeping and a joke about naming her second child, no thank you. The third had an address. Argilla Road, Ipswich. No number. Just the road and a description of the gate. Underneath it, in handwriting that started as hers and came apart halfway through, 5 words. He cannot ever know she exists. No name. No explanation. Just a fact I had not owned 9 seconds earlier. My sister had been afraid of someone had not told me and had died with it. My first instinct was to bag it. That was not a noble instinct, and it was the strongest one I had. Burn it, bin it, let her keep her secret, take the baby home. My life fit in a very small space, and somebody had just handed me a child to put in it. There was no room for a man behind a gate. The diary went in my coat pocket. Then Alicia woke up. She did not cry. That is what I keep coming back to. She made a small sound like a question, and when I turned around she was looking at me with her whole face, 92 days in the world, 9 of them without a mother, looking at me like I might have an answer. Down on the floor of my sister's kitchen. Flour dust, tape, bags. Out of the seat, up against my shoulder, and I made a sound I did not know I could make. Some low nonsense in the back of the throat, the noise you make at a burn on your own wrist. She went quiet. Then, because I kept doing it, she laughed. 3 months is early for that. I looked it up afterward, at 2 in the morning, the way you look up a thing you are afraid you imagined. 11 months before that afternoon I sat with my ankles crossed in a beige office, while a woman with excellent posture explained that my body would not do this. She used the word conclusive. There was a framed photograph of a sailboat behind her head, and I looked at the sailboat the whole time, because I had already decided not to make her uncomfortable. Nobody asked me. I thought on that kitchen floor, with my sister's daughter laughing into my collarbone. Not once in my whole life has anybody asked me. Roland did not ask. He said, I think we both know, which is what a man says when he has already packed. My hands knew how to hold her. That is what took the ground out. Not grief. My hands knew how to do the thing I had been told my body could not do. Nobody had taught them, and I had been carrying them around for 39 years without knowing what they were for. I drove to Ipswich that night. I would like to say I thought about it for a week. She was in the car by 9, and I was on 133 by 9:20, heater roaring, diary on the passenger seat, telling myself twice, out loud, in the voice I use on customers, that I was only going to look at the mailbox. There is no mailbox. There is a stone wall running along Argilla Road for longer than it has any right to, a gate standing open, and a drive that goes back through the marsh grass with snow coming down through the headlights in slow diagonal lines. I drove up it. The house at the end was lit in every window. Every single one, top floor to bottom, the way you light a place for a party. 11 on the front face. I counted them with the engine running. In 11 lit windows, not one person. Not one shadow crossing a room. Nothing moving anywhere in that house at all. The car smelled like hot dust off the heater vents. Alicia slept. Out past the drive, the marsh made the sound marsh makes in winter, which is almost nothing. The sound of a large flat place holding still. A long time went by. Then reverse, because I had come to look at a mailbox and there wasn't one, and there is a limit to what a reasonable woman does at 10 at night with a baby in the back. I turned to check behind me. A man was standing in the drive, 30 feet back, in the middle of the snow, in a suit with no coat over it. His hands were open and loose at his sides, the way a man shows you he is holding nothing. He did not step forward. He stood in my red taillights with the snow coming down, and he did not step forward. I got out of the car. I have gone over this. Phone in my pocket. Locked door. Running engine. Clear road behind me. And I got out of the car, and I could not tell you why, except that his hands were empty, and some part of me had already decided. He said, "Lindsay." He said it the way you say a name you have said before. Not a question. Not a guess. I stood in the drive of a house where nobody breathed, snow going into my collar, and understood that I had come out here to find a stranger, and he had been waiting for me the way you wait for someone who is late. The kitchen was the size of my apartment and warm as a held hand, and I would not sit down. 2 a.m. Alicia, awake and heavy on my shoulder, past crying. In that glassy state babies get where they are simply present. My back near the door. Keys in my fist. Coat still on. He filled a kettle. "Have you eaten?" That was the first thing that frightened me. Not the 11 lit windows. Not that he knew my name. A man in a suit at 2 a.m. asking whether I had eaten, in the tone you would use on a colleague who had driven a long way. "I'm not hungry." That isn't what I asked. He set the kettle down. He did not come toward me. He had put himself on the far side of the island, 6 feet and a slab of stone between us, and he had done it before I could ask, the way a man moves furniture out of a doorway for someone carrying a box. "Her name is Alicia," I said. "She's your daughter." Yes. Just that. No performance of surprise. He looked at her for perhaps 2 seconds and then away, and what it cost him, I could not read. "Claudia never told you." "Claudia told me she was going to Vermont." A pause. "That was in June. There is a particular arithmetic that happens in a room like that." June. The baby in November. 7 months of him not knowing. 9 days of me not knowing. My sister carrying the whole of it alone, and not one of us asked anything. "She wrote about you. 1 line. She said you could never know Alicia existed." He took that the way you take a diagnosis you have already read the results of. She was right to write it. She was wrong about who to be afraid of. Meaning what? Meaning me is the easy answer. He turned the kettle off before it whistled. "By the end of this week, for people in this state will know a child of my blood was born in November. By the end of next week, 40. None of them will be me. Every one of them will want to look at her. And Gloucester is a small town with a rental agreement in your name. You want me to hand her over?" "No. Fast." The only fast thing he said all night. "Bring her here. Both of you. You keep her, you keep the door, you keep the keys. Stay as long as you want and not 1 day past it. If you want to leave at 4 a.m, nobody in this house stands between you and the car. I will put it in writing if writing means anything to you. And what do you get? He looked at me then, properly, and the look went on slightly too long.
Time, he said.
In which to be told what she is like. Alicia started up. Not a real cry, the wind-up before one. I shifted her, and she found the place she likes, the flat of her palm against the side of my throat, over the pulse. She has done it since the first night. What she is checking for, I have never worked out. Would you hold her? No idea why I said it. My mouth got there before the rest of me. He came around the island, stopped a careful distance away, and put his arms out. It was wrong. All wrong. Forearms too high, hands too far apart, a man being handed a stack of plates.
No.
Like this. Under her head. She's not going to bite you. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. She weighed nothing to him. That was the strangest part, watching a man discover he cannot feel the weight of the thing he is afraid of dropping. He held her a foot from his chest, entirely still, and looked down at her with an expression I have seen exactly once before, on a woman at the hospital being told her husband had come through the surgery. He was terrible at it.
He was so terrible at it.
That is when I decided. Not the argument. Not the 4 people who become 40. A man who had ruled something longer than my town has had a name, standing in his own kitchen holding a baby like a stack of plates. One night. That's all I'm agreeing to. In the car, on the way, I had already worked out which bag had a week of formula in it. He asked, I thought, going up the stairs behind him. He actually asked me. The woman was waiting on the landing. Somewhere past 60 in the face and nowhere near it in every other way. Gray wool. Hands folded. She had clearly been standing there long enough to hear the whole of it. Adeline Prynne. You must be the aunt. Lindsay. Of course. She looked at Alicia with real warmth. That was the thing. Nothing false in her face at all. What a mercy there was somebody free to take her. And how fortunate that you had no children of your own to consider. I said thank you. And carried my sister's daughter down a hallway with a runner so thick it took the sound out of my own footsteps, into a room with a crib already in it, and got her down, and stood in the dark with my coat still on. The house made no noise. Not the settling kind. Not the pipes. There were people in it. 2 of them had passed me on the stairs. A house with people in it makes a low sound underneath everything, the sound of breathing going on in other rooms, and I had never once noticed it until I stood in a place where it was missing. Halfway through unpacking the formula, I understood what she had said to me. Fortunate that you had no children of your own. Conclusive, the woman with the sailboat had said. I'm afraid there's nothing to be done. 2 women, 11 months apart, same pleasant voice, same message. That my emptiness was a convenience, that I ought to be glad of it, that the only useful thing about a body like mine is it leaves both hands free to carry somebody else's. You have stayed this long, and I noticed. There is a part of this I have not told you yet, and it is the part one have been dreading, the reason my sister wrote that line. The real one, not the one I believed for 6 weeks. If you want to be here when it comes, stay with me. Subscribe, and I will not lose you before I get there. By the 3rd week I was baking again. There is a kitchen in the west end of that house nobody has cooked in since the Truman administration. I got the ovens lit and started going down at 4 in the morning out of pure habit, because my hands do not know what to do with a night that has nothing in it. Nobody in that house eats. I made bread for a household of people who do not eat and left it on the counter, and it went every day, and I never once saw who took it. Bertie Fenn ran the place and had run it for her mother before her. She explained about the ovens and about which staircase was warm, and eventually about the petition. Filed Tuesday. Succession review. They're entitled. Entitled to what? To have her looked at. Bertie kept folding. A woman who does not stop working to deliver news, which I appreciated more than I can tell you. There's a form of assessment. A physician of the court, witnesses, the whole business. Older than the Commonwealth, perfectly legal, and he can't refuse it. He's the king. That's rather the point, love. He's the king by their arrangement. She shook out a pillowcase. A man who can be refused is a man who can refuse. He hasn't got that either. I had thought power like his would look like being exempt, that he could say no and the thing would stop. Instead, there was a filing, and a date, and a woman in gray wool who had outlived 4 of these men without once breaking a rule. That is how you lose. Not to cruelty, to paperwork. The filing ran 4 pages, and there was not one hostile sentence in it.
That is what got me.
Somebody had sat down with a good pen and written, in the manner of a woman requesting a survey of a boundary wall, that a child should be brought into a room and looked at to establish whether she was worth anything. At the bottom, in the same hand, a note offering to send a car, so I would not have to drive in the snow. She means it too, Bertie said. That's not a trick. She'd send the car. That's worse. It generally is. I went out to find him with a petition in my hand and an argument organized in my head, and did not use one word of it. He was on the stone terrace on the seaward side at 4 in the afternoon, in the last of the light. That hour is the only one he can stand, the flat gray 20 minutes when the sun is down behind the marsh, but the sky has not caught up. I came out in my coat over flour, and he moved along the wall to make room without looking around. You can see Crane from here. On a clear day, the whole run of the beach. I've been coming to that beach my whole life. I know. Snow came in off the water. Very fine. More like sifted sugar than weather. It landed on his shoulder and stayed. It did not melt. It sat on the wool of his coat exactly as it had landed and built up there across 20 minutes, and watching it do that taught me what he was an hour before my head caught up. She used to come here. Your sister. She'd walk the length of it and back and complain about the parking the entire way. She never told me she knew you. She wasn't allowed to. By you? By herself. He turned his collar up, which was theater, because the cold has never once touched him. She was better at keeping things than you think. She kept me for 6 years, and told nobody. 6 years.
She talked about you.
Constantly. Her sister, who works nights. Her sister, who fixed the boiler herself. Her sister, who married a man who counts things. A pause with a shape to it. She said you were the only person she'd ever met who could be disappointed without making it anybody else's problem. The water got a long look after that. 9 days emptying an apartment. 11 months of people arranging their faces at me. A whole winter of being handled. And a man who is not even alive the way I am alive stood on a terrace and handed me 4 sentences of my sister that I could not have gotten anywhere else, and asked me for nothing. Ask me why I stayed, I thought. Ask me anything.
Just ask me something.
We went in when the light went. In the hall between the terrace door and the stairs he stopped. I stopped. The distance between us had been 6 feet all week, and it was not 6 feet then. Neither of us had done it deliberately. Both of us knew exactly what the next thing was. He stepped back. Why do you keep doing that? Doing what?
That. 4 times now.
You come into a room, you get to a certain distance, and then you find something urgent on the other side of the house. My voice came out steadier than I felt. If you want me gone, say it and I'll go tonight. I've done gone before. I'm very good at it. It isn't that. Then what? He was quiet long enough that I heard the ovens tick 2 floors down. Because I cannot trust what you feel when you are near me. That is not modesty. It is the single true thing I can tell you tonight, and you will not understand it, and I would rather you did not. I took it as modesty. That goes on the record because I have been back to that hallway more times than I can count. He told me the truth. 4 feet away, the whole of it, in 1 sentence. And I heard a powerful man being humble about his own effect on people, and went upstairs almost warm with it. The petition sat on the hall table for 3 days. Neither of us mentioned it again. They did the assessment on a Thursday in the long room, with snow coming down over the marsh and 11 witnesses, and a physician of the court who had cold hands and apologized for them. It took 4 minutes. She was very good. She lay on the cloth they put down and looked at the ceiling and did not cry once, and when he touched the inside of her wrist, she opened her hand out flat, the way she does, and the room was quiet enough that I heard the man's cuff move. "Unkind lead," he said. I did not know the word. I learned it standing up, in a room full of strangers, which is how I have learned most things this year. It means she will not turn. Whatever they carry and pass on did not pass to her. She will grow and age and go gray and die in 80 years of ordinary human causes, and the line ends in her hands. In that room, it means she is a defect in a document. Prin was gracious. She came to me afterward with both hands out and said they would of course make every provision. That nobody would think of separating me from the child now. That it was a blessing in its own way, because the poor thing would never have to carry any of it. Then she said the word,
barren,
of the line. She used it about the baby, in a soft voice, with her head tipped, the way you would say delicate. Roland used it in a kitchen in Gloucester in March. He said, "I'm not going to spend the rest of my life pretending this is fine." And then he said the word, once, and then he apologized for saying it, which was worse, because it meant he had been thinking it long enough to have a word ready. Upstairs.
drawer, diary.
I had not opened it since the night I found it. 3 entries and an address, and I was certain I had read all of it. There were 19 more pages at the back, written from the other end, upside down. The way you hide a thing in plain sight from a woman who is only going to flip through the front. Not a frightened woman protecting a baby. Older than that. The dates went back 6 years. Brought L to the thing in Ipswich. She didn't want to come. She never wants to come. I made her wear the green. He came across the room. I have never seen him cross a room for anyone. He got about 4 feet from her and stopped like he'd walked into a wall, and I watched his face and I knew in my whole body, and she was talking to Cater about parking and she never even looked up. She never even looked up. I read it on the floor with my back against the bed. My hands were fine. Noticing that they were fine seemed important at the time. I went to him the next morning. I asked him to take it out of her. He said no. I asked again. I said she has a husband, she has a mortgage, she has a life she built out of nothing, and you will walk into it, and it will come down, and she will not even get to choose, because she will not know what she is choosing. And he said, after a very long time, that he would do it for that reason, and no other. Alicia was fever-fussy that night. Something viral, ordinary, the kind of thing that happens to a baby in February on the North Shore. Bertie offered. 2 of the staff offered. She would not go to anyone. At 3 in the morning, I was walking the length of the upstairs hall with her against me, and she got quiet, and her palm came up and settled flat against my throat and stayed.
Dark hallway.
House where nobody breathes. A baby's hand over the only pulse in it. That was the worst night of my life, and it contains, in the middle of it, for minutes I would not trade for anything.
His study, at 5. He was at the desk with nothing on it.
Not reading. Not working.
Sitting.
The diary went down in front of him, open to the page. I said nothing. He read it without touching it, and did not look surprised at any point, and that was my answer before he opened his mouth. You took a night out of my head. Yes.
Say it.
Not yes. Say what you did. I removed the memory of the evening of the 14th of June, 6 years ago, from your mind. Evenly. Like a man giving a statement to a police officer. It took under a minute. You did not feel it. You went home and told your husband the party was dull. Because my sister asked you. Because she was right. He stood. The desk stayed between us, which he has always done, which I understood then was not courtesy. You had a marriage. You had a life you built out of nothing. You would have lost the whole of it without understanding what you were losing it for, and I decided you should not have to. You decided. Yes. What else? He went still. What else have you taken? Since I got here. The terrace. The kitchen. Any of it. All of it. How would I know? Nothing else. I swear it on. On what? What have you got to swear on that I can check? My voice did not rise. That is what I remember. You would say nothing else either way. That's the whole problem with you. Whatever you tell me now, You'd say exactly the same thing if it were a lie, and I have no way, ever, for the rest of my life, of finding out. At the door I stopped. You did not ask me. Then I stood in the hallway outside his study for a long time before going upstairs. I have never told him that. And I lay awake until the ovens should have been lit, going back through every warm thing that had happened to me in that house, the terrace, the snow on his shoulder, for sentences about my sister, holding each one up and finding I could not tell, and would never be able to tell, which of them had been mine. For days, without speaking. I packed on the first day, unpacked on the second because a crib does not fit in a Corolla, and I needed an address before I put her in a car in February. Packed again on the third. Then went down and lit the ovens at 4 in the morning like a woman with somewhere to be. Bertie watched me carry 200 pounds of flour past her and said nothing whatsoever, which is the greatest kindness anyone has done me in my adult life. On the fourth day, I read the rest. I had stopped at the page where he agreed. There was more. My sister, as I never once knew her. It isn't guilt. I want to write it down honestly at least once. I went to bed with him 11 months after I made him do it, and I knew exactly what I was, and I did it anyway, and I would do it again. He was always kind to me. That's the thing nobody would believe. He never once let me think it was something it wasn't. I let myself think it anyway because a person can decide to be foolish, and I decided over and over for 6 years. Alicia was mine. Not an accident. Not a trap. I wanted her, and I went and got her, and I have never in my life been so certain about anything. Then, dated 2 days before Route 133, in handwriting that is hers and steady the whole way through. Lindsay. If you're reading this, you already know I lied, and you'll have worked out roughly what for, and I'm not going to apologize, because you'd hate that more than the lie. Here's what I want. Take her to him. He will not ask you for anything. That's not restraint. That's what he thinks decency is, and he'll stand in that house being decent at you until one of you is dead. So make him ask. Make him say it out loud in front of people. You've spent your entire life waiting to be asked something and being too proud to say so, and I am the only person alive who knows that about you, so I'm saying it now on paper, where you can't interrupt me. Make him ask, Linz. And then take your time answering. He was in the nursery, on the floor beside the crib, back against the wall, in the dark, doing nothing at all. Not watching her, not guarding the door. Sitting on the floor of his daughter's room the way people sit outside a room where something is being decided. There was a folded square of cloth in his hands, and he was not doing anything with it. One of the mismatched dish towels out of the bag I packed in Rockport. It had been in the crib since the first night, because it still had her apartment on it, and washing it was beyond me. I sat down next to him. Not close. Close enough that our coats touched. Neither of us said anything for a long time. The house was as quiet as it always is. Down the hall the radiator made its one sound. Alicia breathed the way babies breathe, too fast, like they are always in a slight hurry. And the fight went out of me the way heat goes out of a room, gradually and then all at once. I want it back. He did not turn. The night. All of it. The room, the party, the moment you came across the floor. Everything you took. Lindsay. I'm not deciding anything until I have it. Not about her. Not about you.
Not about staying.
For different people have handed me the finished version of my own life, and I am not doing it a 5th time. It will not be a gift. He said it to the floor. You have understood this as a kindness returned. It is not. You will get the whole of it, including the part one have carried alone for 6 years, which is that you said yes. In a room, out loud, to a man you had known for 90 seconds. And then it was taken out of you, and you went home and made your husband a cup of tea. That I had not known. Do it anyway. You could leave in the morning and never know. Do it anyway. He turned then and put his hand up and stopped 6 inches short, the way he has stopped every single time.
Ask me, I said.
May I? Yes. It is not like remembering. I have tried to describe it to exactly one person since, and I did it badly. Nothing arrives. You walk into a room in your own house that has been behind a door you did not know was a door, and everything in it is yours, and has been the whole time, and is covered in 6 years of dust.
June.
A house on the water, further up Argilla, somebody's anniversary. Wearing the green because Claudia made me. 33 years old, with 2 years left in my marriage, and no idea. Holding a caterer by the elbow, explaining at length that he cannot put the vans there. And a man comes across the room. He gets 4 feet away and stops like he has walked into a wall, and I turn around with my mouth already open about the parking, and I look at him. And I look at him. And I hear my own voice, 33 years old, with no idea in the world what the question was, say, yes.
All right. Yes.
Coming back into that nursery was like coming up out of water. He had moved off the wall and was on one knee in front of me, close enough to catch me, not touching me. Ask me? I said when my mouth worked again. Now that I've got it. Now that it's mine. Ask me again. Not tonight. He stood. You have had it back for 90 seconds. You will not decide anything tonight that you cannot take apart tomorrow and check the seams of. 6 years I had walked around with a hole in me the exact shape of a room in Ipswich. Went to work. Paid a mortgage. Signed the divorce. Lit the ovens at 4 in the morning with a room missing out of the middle of my own head, and thought the flatness of it all was simply what 39 was. Sleep did not happen. I sat in the window seat until the sky over the marsh went the color of a dirty nickel, holding my sister's dish towel, furious with her and grateful to her, and unable to separate the two, understanding for the first time that I never would. They gave their ruling on the first Saturday in March. The long room. Snow coming down over the marsh. 40 of them in evening dress at 2 in the afternoon. I had flour under one fingernail. Up since 4 making bread nobody eats because my hands needed a job. 10 minutes of scrubbing and one nail kept it. So there I stood, in a 200-year-old room in a borrowed gray dress with a baby on my hip and Gloucester still under my fingernail. Roland was there. Neither of us arranged it. He does the accounts for a family in Manchester by the Sea who have been in these people's orbit for 3 generations without ever being told what they are in the orbit of. He came as somebody's +1 in his good suit and watched his ex-wife walk into the room holding a child. Prin's case was sound. 11 minutes without raising her voice or saying one unkind word, and by the end there was no version where she lost. The line ends in an unkind-led child. The guardian is a human woman with no standing and no capacity. The remedy is procedural, gentle, and total. She was generous about me, at length, which was the most effective thing anyone did all afternoon. I had shown the child a great deal of devotion. Devotion was not a qualification. The arrangement had been understandable in an emergency, and emergencies end. Then she said a household ought to be built on something more durable than the goodwill of a woman with no reason to stay, and 40 people looked at me at once, and every one of them was thinking about how long a human woman lasts. I let them look. 11 months in waiting rooms teaches you that there is nothing they can do with their faces that a receptionist has not already done to me. He did not argue with her. He stood up and said he would submit to the oath of restraint.
Permanently.
Over me, over the child, over every living creature for the remainder of his existence. I did not know what that meant. Half the room did. I heard it go through them, a sound like a held breath let out badly. Bertie told me afterward. It is the thing they all have, and the thing he had more than any of them. It is how every king in that room's memory has held a room like that room. He put it down in one sentence, in public, in front of 40 people, so a woman he had taken one night from could answer him in a voice he could be certain was hers. Prin understood before I did. She sat down very slowly. She had won the argument and lost the room, because a man who cannot compel can only be followed by people who choose to, and she knew, within about 4 seconds, roughly how many would. About half. It was about half. They went out through the doors at the back over the next quarter of an hour, in ones and twos, quietly, the way people leave a church when they decide the sermon is not for them. Nobody stopped them. Nobody in that house was ever going to be able to stop anybody again, which was the entire point. He stood at the front and watched a third of everything he had walk out into the snow, and did not once look at the doors. Bertie stayed. I noticed that. Bertie stood at the back with her hands folded exactly the way Prin folds hers, and did not move a muscle for the whole of it. Then he named Alicia his heir. Out loud. Unkind led. The end of the line. In front of all of them. He said her full name, the way you say a name into a record, slowly so the person writing it down can keep up. A room that had spent an hour discussing my sister's daughter as a defect in a document had to sit there and hear it as a name. Then he turned around and looked at me, and the room went quiet in a way I have never heard a room go quiet. I am asking you, he said. Nobody in that house has asked anybody anything in 200 years. You could see it on their faces. You could see them not knowing where to put their hands. I had rehearsed no. That goes on the record too. At 5 that morning, hands in a bowl, I rehearsed a short, gracious, complete refusal, because I have spent my whole life being the one who does not need anything, and I was not giving that up in front of 40 strangers. I took my time. He let me. That is the part one would tell you, if I could tell you only one thing about him. 40 people in that room, a woman with flour under her nail, and he let it go on and on. He did not fill it. He did not help. It went on long enough to be rude. Long enough that somebody at the back cleared a throat and somebody else moved a chair. Alicia got bored of my shoulder and turned around to look at the room. Still nobody said anything, because the only person with the authority to end it had given the authority away in front of witnesses. Beige office. Photograph of a sailboat. A kitchen in Gloucester in March, and a man with a word ready. My sister making me wear the green. Every consequential thing in my life had been handed to me finished. This was the first one that came to me open. Yes, I said. Afterward Roland came over. He said Lindsay, and then could not find the second thing. I asked after his mother, who was always decent to me. He said she was well. Alicia reached for me out of Kieran's arms and made the noise she makes that is not a word yet but is nearly one, and I took her, and Roland watched me do it. I said nothing cutting. 11 things have occurred to me since. I did not need one of them. Monday I went back to the bakery and worked there another 11 months, for nights a week, because no man's house was going to become my only address, and because bread does not care what you were on Saturday. Late that night, in a room off the nursery, I put my palm flat against his throat. Over the place where mine goes. The way she does to me. There is nothing there. There will never be anything there. I left my hand where it was. Somewhere out past that marsh is a woman with the same hole in her that I have, and nobody is going to put down a single thing for her, and she is still fighting. I know, because I have met her. In a clinic waiting room. At a funeral. In a parking lot at 6 in the morning with the heater running. We recognize each other, and we do not say anything. If you are her tonight, you already know why you stayed to the end of this. There are more of us than anyone counts. This is where we keep finding each other, and I do not think either of us wants to lose it on the way back to mourning. Stay close. Subscribe, and come back, because not every one of these ends the way mine did.